Her son met her at the curb and said, "Mom, the reservation was only for 4." Lorraine Bishop smoothed her blazer, nodded once, and watched her own family disappear inside. They didn't know she still held 62% of the company they now ran like a private club. By morning, she'd revoke their access, freeze the accounts, and reinstate her name. Top line. They thought they'd edged her out politely. They forgot who signed the founding documents. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The late spring air in Charleston carried the faint scent of magnolia and ocean salt, warm enough for bare arms, just crisp enough to remind Lorraine Bishop that time didn't wait, not for the tides, and certainly not for people. She stepped out of the town car slowly, careful in her pale lavender jacket, the silk blouse beneath catching a whisper of breeze. Across the cobbled sidewalk, the restaurant loomed with new glass awnings and steel planters, trendy, loud, and sterile. Not the place she would have picked, but she hadn't picked anything in a long time. They were already there. Max stood near the hostess podium, wearing that smug business-casual blazer he thought made him look younger. Rachel's laugh floated toward her, brittle and high-pitched, already clutching the wine list like a prop. Sophie hung back slightly, fingers twitching at the hem of her dress. Lorraine smiled faintly and approached. Max noticed first. His expression shifted, recognition, then hesitation. Rachel turned, her mouth tightening, and Sophie took a half step forward as if she might speak. But no one did. Max finally broke the silence. "It's only for 4, Mom. We didn't know you were coming." His voice wasn't unkind, but it wasn't kind either. Just efficient, like a man confirming an overbooked flight. Lorraine blinked once, not fast, not slow. Her lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. Sophie looked like she might cry, but Rachel pulled her gently by the elbow. The hostess, young, polished, utterly unaware of the family theater unfolding, called out, "Bishop, party of 4?" Lorraine glanced down at her wristwatch, then back up. "Yes, that's them," she murmured, her voice low and steady. She stepped aside as they were let in. The doors closed behind them with a hush of tempered glass. "Would you like me to find you a seat, ma'am?" the hostess asked quickly, sensing something off. Lorraine smiled again, gentler this time. "Thank you, sweetheart. But no." She turned, crossing the street carefully as the traffic light blinked red. Her shoes clicked neatly over the uneven stones. On the far corner sat an older place, weathered sign, ivy growing around the wrought iron railing, a black chalkboard boasting Sea Island bisque and shrimp and grits the way Grandma did it, a little southern bistro with wooden shutters and candles in mason jars. She pushed open the door. Inside, the lighting was soft. The murmur of conversation felt like a hum, not a roar. A waiter with kind eyes greeted her. "Just you tonight?" Lorraine looked around. "Yes," she said. "Just me." He led her to a table by the window. As she sat, the linen napkin already folded on her lap, she watched across the street as shadows moved behind frosted glass. Rachel's bobbing blonde head, Max gesturing at something on a tablet, Sophie still and silent. Her water arrived, then a tiny bread basket with warm cornbread. She ate slowly, savoring each bite. No one texted, no one called. Lorraine picked up her phone once to check the time, then put it face down beside her fork. Outside, dusk pulled long fingers across the city. The bistro lights flickered on in amber warmth. Then, from her purse, she quietly removed a manila envelope. Inside, the original incorporation papers for Bishop & Sons Coastal Supply Company, edges softened by time but signatures still bold. She laid them on the table like a second meal, and smiled. The house was dark when she returned, just as she'd left it. Quiet, sprawling, a bit too big for one person, but exactly the right size for memories that never quite left. Lorraine flipped on a single light in the front hall. It cast long shadows over the mahogany floor and caught the dust dancing in the air like something unsettled. She didn't go upstairs. Instead, she made her way to the study, once the brain of the Bishop Empire, now more like an afterthought sealed in oak. The door creaked faintly as she opened it. Inside, the air was still, tinged with wood polish and old printer toner. Her desk, heavy and solid as ever, sat beneath a layer of fine dust. Her fingers hesitated at the brass handle of the wall safe, polished smooth by decades of habit. She leaned in, whispering the combination numbers more from instinct than memory. Click. The safe gave a soft sigh as it opened. Inside, neatly stacked and wrapped in labeled folders, sat the bones of a legacy everyone else seemed eager to bury. She pulled, to object, maybe to pivot, but Lorraine simply pulled a folded document from her jacket pocket and placed it beside the binder, printed in bold at the top, Notice of Pending Board Motion. "This is being filed this week," Lorraine said, calm as still water. "Review it at your convenience. There will be a vote." Max's nostrils flared, but he kept his face neutral. "You're making this hostile, Mom." Lorraine looked around the room. Hostile is when you delete someone's name from their own legacy. A few heads turned quickly away, employees suddenly fascinated with their laptops or the condensation on their coffee cups. She gave one final nod and turned toward the door. Her hand reached for the handle, then paused. Without facing them, she added, "There's still time to remember who taught you how to lead with more than a spreadsheet." Gary Morris arrived at 8:03 a.m. sharp, as promised, slightly out of breath, khakis creased, a manila folder hugged close to his chest like it might fly away if he didn't hold tight. Lorraine had already cleared a spot at the dining room table, the same table where company holiday plans used to be drawn over sweet tea and casserole. Now it was covered in paper, articles, amendments, outdated memos, copies of every LLC update since the early 2000s, most of them printed by Rachel, many of them unsigned by Lorraine. Gary adjusted his glasses. "It's all smoke and mirrors," he said, thumbing through a stapled packet. "They redrafted governance terms last year, sure, but none of it's binding. You never signed the amendments." "And the bank accounts?" Lorraine asked, pouring him a black coffee without cream. "You're still listed as principal account holder on all core accounts. Rachel has access, but she's an authorized user. Temporary authorization, at that." Lorraine didn't smile. She nodded once and stood. Time to clean the house. The Bishop and Sons headquarters hadn't changed much on the surface. Same faux marble floor, same framed photo of the original shrimp trawler mounted behind reception, but Lorraine noticed the subtle edits now. The logo had been modernized to lowercase Bishop Co., her original corner office door now closed and dark, and the staff wore sleek polos instead of work shirts with stitched names. She stepped off the elevator and headed straight to finance. "Morning, Miss Bishop," said Camilla, the junior accountant, eyes wide. Lorraine nodded. "Can you bring up the user permissions on our bank dashboard?" Camilla glanced around. "Should I call Rachel?" "Number just log in." The girl hesitated, then obeyed. Within 5 minutes, Lorraine was inside the admin panel. She scrolled past Max's name, stopped at Rachel's. She clicked. "Remove access. Confirm?" She tapped once. "Done," Lorraine said. "Thank you, Camilla." Then she headed for the warehouse. It smelled like it always had. Wood pallets, salt air, the distant hum of forklifts and radio static. And people. Real people, moving crates, tightening straps, whistling to each other in between runs. "Lorraine?" called out Javier, now a floor manager, still wearing the faded green cap she'd given him on his 5th anniversary. He walked over, hands dusty and open, smile wide. "I thought I was seeing things." "Still standing," she said. Edwin walked over next, followed by Dina from shipping and Marcus from inbound logistics. Within minutes, she was surrounded. "Good to have you back," someone said. "Wasn't the same without you." "Things have been strange, quiet, but tense." She didn't make speeches, just listened, nodding slowly, her fingers resting on the crossbrace of an old packing table like it was the altar of something sacred. Someone snapped a photo. She didn't pose. Back upstairs, Rachel was already pacing in her office, heels clicking across engineered wood, phone pressed to one ear. I don't know how she did it. She just locked me out, Rachel hissed. Can't you reverse it? A pause, then a shift in her tone, sharp, brittle. Wait, what do you mean she holds controlling interest? Lorraine didn't need to hear the rest. She stood outside the glass office door, watching Rachel's spine stiffen. Then she walked on, silent. That night, at her dining room table once again, Lorraine reviewed the blank board restructure motion template Gary had sent over. She picked up her pen, the old fountain one, the kind that didn't delete easily. She capped the pen. The restaurant was tucked into an old Charleston row house, one of those places that didn't advertise, didn't cater, didn't post on Instagram, the kind of place that whispered its own name and trusted you to find it if you were meant to. Lorraine was early, as always. She chose the back booth by the fireplace, not because it was private, but because it had history. The kind of corner where real deals used to happen over bourbon and silence, not cocktails and pitches. The hostess returned with a woman in navy linen and silver jewelry that looked old enough to have stories. "Eleanor Mays?" she said, sliding into the booth like she belonged there, which she did. Lorraine raised her glass in greeting. "I wasn't sure you'd come." Eleanor shrugged. "Didn't think I would either, but curiosity and gallows humor go a long way." They hadn't spoken in person in almost a decade, not since their companies had butted heads over a coastal vendor deal that ended in polite silence and mutual frost. But tonight, there was warmth and respect. Eleanor nodded at Lorraine's menu, then leaned in. "You know, I always admired you. Not publicly, of course. That would have ruined our image." Lorraine smirked. "Would have killed yours more than mine." Eleanor chuckled. "Maybe, but you didn't marry into this. You built it. And that never left my mind." There was a pause as the server poured water and took their order. She crab soup for both, seared flounder for Lorraine, duck breast for Eleanor. When he was gone, Lorraine unfolded the linen napkin slowly. "I don't want the whole company back," she said. "Just the soul of it. The part before Max started using buzzwords he didn't understand." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "And what does that look like?" Lorraine pulled a sheet of paper from her purse. Handwritten columns of product lines, vendor names, margins, handwritten notes in the margins about local sourcing. "Low volume, high integrity, honest trade. I'm not here to fight Max on branding. I'm here to rebuild the part he discarded." Eleanor studied the page. "You're talking spin-off." "I'm talking resurrection," Lorraine replied. Quiet, focused, just enough to remind them what real looks like. Another long pause. Then Eleanor leaned back, crossed her arms, and said, "I've got a warehouse. South End. Wasn't doing much with it except letting my nephew store his landscaping junk. Rent-free. You want it? It's yours." Lorraine blinked once. "You're offering help?" "Number, I'm offering memory," Eleanor said. "You and I?" "We don't go quietly." They clinked glasses, low and deliberate. Lorraine's phone buzzed beside her plate. She didn't check it, but the screen glowed bright enough for Eleanor to read the name, Max Bishop. Lorraine tapped the side button, silencing it. Eleanor glanced at her. "That call about to blow?" "Let it," Lorraine said. "I'm done playing fire marshal. It's time I start lighting my own." They ate in silence after that, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence shared by women who had seen too much, built too much, and lost just enough to know what mattered. As dessert arrived, a shared bread pudding neither admitted to ordering, Eleanor reached into her tote bag and slid over a set of old blueprints. Layout of the space. Office still has phone lines. Floors are solid. Needs scrubbing, but nothing a few hard days won't fix. Lorraine glanced over it, then folded it neatly and placed it beside her check. The final bell echoed through the school parking lot as students spilled out in groups, backpacks slung low, earbuds in, heads down. Lorraine waited in the second row of parent pickups, her sedan parked straight, engine quietly running, classical music drifting low from the speakers. She hadn't set foot on this campus in years. Sophie spotted the car, hesitated for half a beat, then slid into the passenger seat without a word. Lorraine didn't smile. She didn't ask about her day. She simply put the car in drive and merged onto the street. They drove in silence, not the kind loaded with anger, but the brittle kind that existed between people too careful to say the first true thing. Outside the window, Charleston passed by in layers: brick townhomes, shaded crepe myrtles, a bakery Lorraine remembered Sophie loving as a child. A tiny paper bag with a ghost of powdered sugar still lived in her glove compartment. Finally, as they turned off the main road, Sophie spoke. "Are you going to fire Dad?" The question was soft, almost polite, but it hung in the air like fog, clinging to everything. Lorraine kept her eyes on the road. "No," she said, voice steady. "I'm not firing. I'm freeing." Sophie turned to look at her, brow furrowed. "Freeing who?" Lorraine pulled into a gravel lot at the edge of a fenced compound. The building before them was squat, weathered, and unremarkable, its brickwork faded, old warehouse signage rusting above the bay doors. But to Lorraine, it looked like possibility. "Come on," she said, cutting the engine. They walked side by side. Lorraine keyed open the padlock Eleanor had given her just yesterday. The metal clanked as the gate creaked wide, sunlight slicing into the dim space beyond. Inside, dust motes drifted through thick shafts of light. Stacks of neglected shelving lined one wall, a few tarped crates slumped in the back like forgotten soldiers. Lorraine flicked the main breaker. The overhead fluorescents buzzed, then flickered to life. Sophie stood in the center, hands in her hoodie pocket, slowly turning in a full circle. "It's raw," she said. "It's honest," Lorraine corrected. Gently, she crossed to a folding table already stacked with printouts, hand-labeled product lists, vendor profiles, startup inventory pulled from past purchase reports. A clunky old laptop sat open beside them, cursor blinking on a spreadsheet. Sophie moved closer. "You're really starting over?" "Not over," Lorraine said. "Around." There was a pause. Then Sophie reached out and clicked into one of the columns. SKU data, quantities, forecasted margins. "This doesn't match what Dad uses." Lorraine smiled faintly. "That's the point." Sophie studied the sheet a little longer. "This formula's wrong." "Then fix it," Lorraine said, handing her a pen. Sophie hesitated only a second, then slid off her backpack and got to work, her fingers tapping in quiet concentration, correcting cells and dragging fields like it was second nature. Lorraine watched her for a moment, arms folded. "You're better at this than your father ever was." Sophie looked up sharply, unsure whether it was a compliment or a wound, but Lorraine was already walking to the other side of the table, pulling a tarp off an old shipment cart. "What do you want from me?" Sophie asked, voice cautious. Lorraine paused. "Nothing you haven't already started to give." The meeting with Gary took place in a borrowed corner office, glass walls, no artwork, a folding chair across from Lorraine's, like the space itself hadn't yet decided who belonged. On the desk between them, the laptop screen glowed with rows of payroll data, Lorraine's hand steady on the trackpad as she scrolled. Gary leaned forward, voice low. "You sure about this?" Lorraine didn't answer right away. She clicked one final cell, Executive Bonuses, FYQ2, Rachel and Max's names side by side, each marked with a green confirmation. She highlighted both, paused, then pressed hold. "Max leveraged my silence to call that progress," she said, almost to herself. "He forgot silence isn't absence." Gary nodded, typing a quick note. "Pending audit justification, we'll code it in compliance." "Not just compliance," Lorraine replied. "Integrity. People watch the top. They always have." By noon, the internal memo had gone live. Effective immediately, Lorraine R. Bishop will resume active oversight of all financial matters related to executive compensation and discretionary bonuses. An audit review is underway. Staff operations remain unchanged. The ripple moved faster than expected. By 12:15, 3 floor supervisors had emailed welcome back notes. By 12:30, Camilla from accounting forwarded a suspicious transfer receipt Rachel had authorized 2 weeks earlier. and by 1:02, Rachel stormed into Lorraine's borrowed office, stilettos hitting the floor like a metronome on tilt. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, brandishing her phone like a subpoena. Lorraine didn't look up from her notes. Resuming oversight. "You're gutting months of work," Rachel snapped. "Vendor streams, staff alignment, rebranding, it's progress." Now Lorraine looked up, calm, unreadable. "Progress," she repeated slowly. "Progress doesn't walk past its elders on the sidewalk." Rachel blinked, unsure whether to fight or flee. "That night outside the restaurant," Lorraine continued, voice quiet, "you stood beside a man who pretended he didn't know his own mother was coming. That wasn't business. That was a choice." Rachel stepped back. The phone in her hand dipped slightly. "I thought it was Max's call. I went along." "And now you're going along again," Lorraine said, stacking her papers. "That's the problem." Outside the door, a few employees slowed their walk, not quite eavesdropping but not walking away either. Rachel straightened. "You're creating chaos." "No," Lorraine replied. "I'm naming who already did." Rachel didn't respond, just turned and walked out, her heels softer now, steps uneven. That evening, Max called for an emergency board vote. Lorraine wasn't invited, but Gary was. Lorraine waited at home, not pacing, just reading an old trade magazine from the early 2000s, one where Bishop and Sons was profiled for rebuilding coastal supply chains after a hurricane. The photo of her on the cover was grainy but proud. At 8:44 p.m., Gary texted, "Vote failed. He tried to override you. No majority. It's done." Lorraine poured a glass of wine and went out onto the porch. The night air was warm with spring and consequence. The letter was short, less than 300 words. Lorraine wrote it at sunrise, seated on her back porch with a legal pad and a mug of Earl Grey, steam curling into the damp Charleston air. No legalese, no marketing fluff. Just her voice, measured, rooted, unafraid. "To our partners, our team, and the families who've built this company with me, I am resuming my role as founder and majority shareholder of Bishop and Sons Coastal Supply Company. We began with one boat, two docks, and a belief that business, like tides, must rise and fall with integrity. In recent years, decisions were made without my consent. That ends now. We will return to what we know best: honest work, earned trust, and relationships that matter. We are not just repositioning a brand, we are reclaiming a purpose." Lorraine R. Bishop. She took a photo of the letter, her handwriting still firm, and sent it to Gary. By noon, it was published to the company's internal portal, external blog, and her personal LinkedIn page. The headline read simply, "Back at the helm." By 3 p.m., it was trending. Old vendors from Savannah and Myrtle Beach commented publicly, "About time." An Alabama distributor messaged her directly, "We've been waiting for you." Even the Charleston Business Gazette ran a front-page digital feature, "Matriarch moves to reclaim Bishop legacy amid internal shakeup." Inside the company, employees passed the article around like gospel. Max didn't call. He emailed, "What's your endgame here?" "You've made your point. This is turning into a circus." Lorraine stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back, "Peace. With or without you." She didn't wait for a reply. Instead, she opened the company scheduling software and created a calendar event titled Company-Wide Town Hall, Wednesday, 9 a.m. Mandatory attendance below it, a single line of agenda. Reorientation, purpose, people, power. She hit send. That night, Sophie came into the kitchen as Lorraine folded up a shipping invoice. She'd been organizing supplies from the new space. Receipts, vendor calls, even a new label printer. "You're going public," Sophie said, not a question. Lorraine nodded. "Quiet revolutions don't stay quiet forever." Sophie looked down at the stack of envelopes. "They won't like it." "They don't have to," Lorraine said, "but they will remember it." The next morning, Lorraine stood at the edge of the Bishop Co. parking lot as a Channel 6 van pulled in, its side wrapped with a smiling anchor and the tagline, "Local Voices. Real Stories." A young producer hopped out, camera already rolling. Ms. Bishop, can we ask a few questions? Lorraine glanced at the warehouse behind her, then back at the camera. You can ask, she said, but the answers won't be about drama, they'll be about direction. The break room turned auditorium at Bishop Co. hadn't seen this much energy in years. Folding chairs filled the floor in clean rows, borrowed from the shipping floor. A projection screen flanked the podium where the company once held safety training and Christmas raffles. Now? The staff murmured quietly, eyes darting toward the front, toward the woman none of them had seen speak in this space for nearly a decade. Lorraine stood behind the podium in slate gray, no makeup, no jewelry, just the quiet steadiness of someone who had nothing to prove, but everything to restore. She scanned the crowd, floor workers, marketing associates, logistics coordinators, a few old hands in the back leaning on walls. Sophie sat front row, her arms folded across a notepad. Max stood near the side door, jaw tight. Rachel sat near the aisle, legs crossed, fingers curled around a coffee cup she hadn't touched. "Good morning," Lorraine began. The room stilled. "I'll be brief and clear. You deserve both." A click of the remote, and the first slide illuminated behind her. What we protect, our people. This company was built on more than numbers, she said. It was built on dignity. No more payroll surprises. No more role shifts without notice. Starting next quarter, every department will see a protection clause in their contracts, one I should have added years ago. The next slide. What we clarify, leadership. There will be no interim titles going forward, no inflated hierarchies. If you lead people, you earn the title. If you lose their trust, you lose the title. That includes me. Murmurs swept the back rows. A third slide clicked forward. What we remove. Illusion. I've reviewed all filings, Lorraine continued. Effective immediately, I'm resuming full executive control as founder and chair. This was not a coup. It's a correction. Max moved, quick, angry. He didn't wait for a rebuttal, just shoved open the side door and walked out into the daylight, his footsteps echoing louder than any objection he could have voiced. Rachel stayed, but her eyes never rose from the floor. Lorraine didn't flinch. Let me be clear, this isn't about exile, this is about accountability. A fourth slide. What we reclaim. Purpose. Gary stepped forward now, a bundle of printed memos in hand. Effective today, he announced, all payroll and operational reporting will follow new executive channels. If you have questions, my team is available all week. Someone in the middle clapped. Then another. Then the room began to shift, not loud, not frenzied, but solid, rhythmic approval. Lorraine took a breath. This company will make fewer headlines after today, but it will make more history. Sophie leaned forward in her seat, eyes locked on her grandmother. Rachel finally looked up, briefly, then looked away again. Lorraine clicked the final slide, a black and white photo of the original Bishop trawler, docked on a foggy morning. Below it, legacy isn't inherited, it's upheld. Lorraine sat in her office at the warehouse, a mug of coffee untouched beside her, and the soft hum of an oscillating fan turning the afternoon into a rhythm. The lights overhead flickered now and then. Eleanor's space wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Gary entered quietly, tablet in hand. "Thought you'd want to see this," he said, placing it on the desk in front of her. Lorraine glanced down, a forwarded email, the subject line, "From Rachel, Re-Town Hall." The message stretched several scrolls long. Apologetic, defensive, vulnerable in places, veiled in others. Phrases like, "We misjudged your silence," and "I thought I was protecting Max from you, not you from him." At the end, a plea, "If there's still room at the table, I'd like to sit with you, not above, not beside, just with." Lorraine didn't reply. Not because she didn't feel anything, but because there were moments when silence wasn't absence, it was structure. The record would reflect the attempt. That was enough. Gary tapped the screen. "I've flagged it for documentation, nothing actionable for now." She nodded, then turned her gaze out the window. Max's car had been gone from the HQ lot all day. An hour later, a separate email came through. From Max. If you want me out officially, say so. But if you think it helps fix the family, I'll step aside. Your move. Max. Lorraine read it 3 times, then began typing her reply. The family isn't broken, the business was. She hit send without another thought. Later that evening, Sophie joined her at the long work table, sleeves rolled up, double-checking SKUs for the second delivery. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, laptop open, spreadsheet columns organized with a precision that didn't come from mimicry. It came from instinct. "I've been thinking," she said, not looking up. "After graduation, I don't want to intern for someone else. I want to build with you. Here." Lorraine leaned back slightly, watching her granddaughter. "You sure it's not out of loyalty?" Sophie met her eyes. "It's out of alignment." Lorraine opened a drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside was a mentorship offer, formal, salaried, and independent of any family perks. No automatic titles, no promises, just work and trust. She handed it to Sophie. "I've updated the bylaws. There's a succession clause now. Structured mentorship over time. You're not being handed anything. You're being offered a start." Sophie took it with both hands, quietly. "And if I mess up?" she asked. Lorraine smiled. "Then we fix it, but not with noise, with grit." That night, Lorraine returned home and opened a secure folder on her laptop labeled Bishop & Sons, Legal Clean Copy. She clicked into Successor Designation and typed in a name. Sophie A. Bishop. Mentorship Track, Founder's Office. She saved the document, encrypted it, and printed a hard copy for her safe. Gary didn't knock. He entered Lorraine's office at the warehouse carrying a leather case, lips pressed into a line that said more than words ever could. He placed the case on the table gently, like it contained something fragile or explosive. Lorraine set down her reading glasses. "What am I about to see?" Gary flipped the case open and powered up his laptop. He navigated to a set of flagged financial reports, the cursor steady as he opened folder after folder, timestamps, wire transfers, vendor logs. "It took time," he said, "but the audit Camila started flagged a pattern." On the screen, a series of transactions labeled under Mariner Advisory Group, a shell company created 8 months ago. The address traced back to a P.O. box. The listed contact number was Max's. Lorraine's hands didn't flinch. "How much?" $321,000, disguised as consulting services, non-existent ones. "From core operations?" Gary nodded. "Skimmed quarterly, but masked under discretionary spending. This wasn't sloppiness. It was designed." Lorraine closed the laptop and set it aside. No anger showed on her face, just gravity, measured and resolute. "Pull every instance. Clean records. I want a ledger that could survive an IRS grilling in January rain." Gary slid her a second folder, already printed, already indexed. "You're holding it." The board convened in a quiet, windowless room on the second floor of the downtown office. Lorraine didn't bring a lawyer. She brought facts. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't look for agreement. She laid out the timeline, the wire transfers, the shell company registration, the missing documentation. She paused only once to pass around a photocopy of Max's digital signature approving an invoice that never produced a deliverable. When she finished, she folded her hands and said simply, "I'm moving for immediate suspension of Max's access and request a formal third-party legal review." For once, no one spoke over her. The aye vote passed 6-1. The one against was symbolic. From a board member Max had recruited last year. Even he couldn't look Lorraine in the eye. Gary stood. "All accounts linked to Max Bishop will be frozen by close of business today." Rachel didn't wait for the follow-up. She stood up slowly, peeled off her ID badge and placed it on the table. "I don't need a vote," she said. "I'm resigning." No grand speech. No defense, just tired shoulders and the realization that survival meant retreat, not denial. Lorraine gave a small nod. "Your resignation will be accepted with full documentation, no press release." Rachel left without another word. Outside the building, Sophie waited by the car. Lorraine joined her, the wind teasing the edges of her blazer, the sky overcast but holding. "It's done," Lorraine said. Sophie looked at her. "Did you expect it to end like this?" "I didn't expect it to end. I expected to fix what shouldn't have started." Sophie looked back at the building. "You didn't burn it down." Lorraine raised an eyebrow. Sophie turned to her and added quieter, "You rebuilt it. From the inside." Lorraine didn't smile, but she did breathe easier. The front office had always been an afterthought, functional, forgettable, painted in the soft beige of compromise. Lorraine changed none of that. Not yet. Instead, she walked in early on a Monday morning with two men from a local sign company and a carefully wrapped bronze plaque under her arm. By lunch, the new seal hung behind reception. A stylized compass rose encircling the words, "Bishop and Sons Coastal Supply Company, established 1981, founded in purpose." At the bottom, in discreet serif lettering, Lorraine Ruth Bishop, founder. The receptionist, young and wide-eyed, leaned forward. "Do we need to add Max's name under—" "No," Lorraine said simply. "We don't." And that was that. That same week, the company website quietly updated its leadership page. Max's profile vanished, Rachel's was archived, new bios appeared for mid-level managers, warehouse supervisors, and even Camilla from accounting. Real names, real photos, no family trees, just earned presence. On the marketing materials, banners, invoices, stationery, the initials MB were scrubbed clean. In their place, the original wordmark returned, crisp, maritime blue, anchored with a tagline that had once adorned Lorraine's first invoice pad, "Work steady, pay fair." She meant it literally. On Thursday, she announced the shift, a new employee-owned profit-sharing model launching with Q3 earnings. "You don't clock in here to build someone else's future," she said at a company-wide meeting. "You build your own, with your hands and your hours. It's time the books caught up." Applause came not like thunder but like tide, slow, rising, inevitable. That weekend, Charleston Ledger Weekly ran the headline, "The Quiet Reclamation, Lorraine Bishop Charts Her Own Return." Below it, a photo of Lorraine standing outside the original dock office, hands folded at her waist, the wind tugging at her blazer like it knew this chapter had waited long enough. The article was respectful, even admiring. Words like stewardship and resilience were used without irony. Eleanor texted her a screenshot with a champagne emoji and the message, "About damn time, Bishop." 2 days later, a package arrived. Inside, a gold-plated nameplate. Heavy, custom engraved, no flourish, no nonsense, still running it. Lorraine placed it on the center of the long conference table back at HQ. No announcement, no email blast, just the quiet clink of brass against wood. That evening, Sophie walked through the newly repainted lobby and stopped in front of the founder's seal. She studied it for a long minute, then looked at Lorraine. "This feels different," she said, "like it belongs." Lorraine nodded. "It always did. I just stopped reminding people." Sophie pointed to the compass rose. "Is that new?" "No," Lorraine said, "it's just finely visible." The restaurant was tucked behind a row of gas-lit storefronts on King Street. Quiet, elegant, more southern restraint than downtown flair. No jazz trio, no branded coasters, just low candlelight and the kind of hush people reserved for real conversation. Lorraine arrived 5 minutes early. She stepped through the door in a charcoal-wrapped dress, her hair simply pulled back, no earrings. The hostess smiled with recognition and led her to a corner table where Rachel was already seated. Sophie was beside her, shoulders a little tense, fingers tracing the rim of her water glass. "Reservation was for 3, Rachel said softly, rising halfway. Lorraine sat without hesitation. "Good." No Max, no explanation. She didn't ask. They ordered with minimal talk, grilled trout, mixed greens, a bottle of Viognier, none of them finished. The food came quickly, but no one seemed eager to begin. It was Sophie who broke the silence, unfolding a folded sheet from her bag. "I've been working on something," she said. "A pitch, small scale, domes, tick suppliers, compostable marine wrap for cold chain logistics. We'd build it under a new wing. I don't want to inherit the old model. I want to challenge it. She placed the page between them. Lorraine studied it. Margins, forecasts, manufacturer leads. It was clean, smart, and unflinching. You want it under the Bishop name? Lorraine asked. Sophie shook her head. I want it under mine. Lorraine leaned back, silent for a beat. Then you'll need capital. Sophie blinked. I'll fund it, Lorraine said simply. Not as a gift, as a founder's investment. You'll own it. You'll lead it. My name doesn't belong on something I didn't build. Sophie's lips parted, but no words came. She only nodded, once, deep and certain. Rachel exhaled almost involuntarily. That's generous. No, Lorraine replied. It's overdue. There was a long pause. Rachel looked down at her napkin, then up, her voice soft. Will you ever forgive us? Lorraine didn't blink. I forgave myself, she said. That was the part you never asked me to do. Rachel swallowed hard. I'm not asking to be let back in. I want to make peace. Lorraine took a sip of water. Peace doesn't need an invitation. It just needs a door. Sophie reached forward and turned the proposal back toward her, gently folding it. I'll file the LLC under Bishop Renewal, she said, but with my full name as principal, no shortcuts. Lorraine smiled faintly. Then don't wait for anyone's permission, including mine. Dessert came in the form of shared coffee and a berry tart no one admitted to ordering. Sophie excused herself to take a call just outside, the kind of move Lorraine didn't miss. Rachel sat across from her, smaller than usual. He didn't come tonight because he knows, she said quietly. Lorraine didn't ask what Max knew, because it didn't matter. The pen moved slowly across the page, not from hesitation, but from precision. Lorraine's handwriting, neat and unhurried, shaped every word with the weight it deserved. She sat in her study, the early evening casting long stripes of sun across her desk. In front of her, the final version of the succession plan, 3 pages long, clean of metaphor or fluff. Gary sat opposite her, watching with quiet focus. This isn't just transfer of power, Lorraine said, not looking up. It's a design for what comes after, and who gets to define it. Gary gave a small nod. You're not just passing the torch, you're rebuilding the damn fire pit. Lorraine slid the final sheet toward him. Gary reviewed it, then pulled the notary seal from his case. With deliberate ceremony, he stamped the bottom corner, then signed. The ink bled slightly into the thick paper. Sophie A. Bishop named successor, Gary read aloud. Effective under structured mentorship, renewable annually, conditional on full performance review. He looked up. You sure you want to make her earn it? She's already started to. He handed her a copy. Lorraine slid it into a navy blue folder labeled in block print, Legacy, 2025. Onward. A week later, twilight fell warm over the Bishop Co. rooftop. Strings of Edison bulbs were hung across the fencing, borrowed folding chairs clustered around folding tables, mismatched tablecloths weighed down by salt shakers and old bolts. The air smelled of barbecue, warehouse dust, and late summer optimism. Lorraine stood in a soft linen shirt, sleeves rolled to her elbows, a lemonade in hand as she watched her employees laugh over cornhole boards and slosh extra sauce onto paper plates. Sophie was by the grill, swapping teasing remarks with 2 of the younger field techs while managing logistics for dessert, like she'd been doing it for years. Gary joined Lorraine near the edge, gazing out at the Charleston skyline. You ever think it would look like this? I stopped trying to picture it a while ago, she said. Turns out that's how it showed up. A toast was called. Someone clanged a fork against a mason jar. Lorraine was pulled forward without ceremony. She stepped onto the makeshift platform, wiping her hands on a napkin. The chatter quieted. People turned to face her, all sun-drenched and smiling, sweat at their brows but ears open. She looked out across faces she knew, and ones she was still learning. Some who had stayed loyal, some who had just arrived, all who mattered. We're not a family business, she said. Laughter stirred in the crowd, half confused, half expecting a twist. "We're a business," Lorraine continued, "run like a family should be." That landed. A round of applause followed, stronger than expected, longer than necessary. She dipped her head, a modest smile forming, then raised her glass. To showing up, to staying steady, and to building something that remembers its roots without sinking in them. Later, as the last lights dimmed and chairs were folded away, Lorraine returned to her office and placed the sealed succession folder in her drawer. Next to it, she set a small frame, one Sophie had given her earlier that day. Inside, a simple quote printed in bold black lettering: "Respect is earned, not assumed by relation." Lorraine sat down slowly, the lights low. The ballroom glowed in golds and deep navy, the chandeliers dimmed just enough to keep everything feeling expensive, but not distant. Tables were dressed in white linen, crystal flutes lined up with machine-cut precision, and a small placard at each setting read, "Coastal Commerce Leadership Awards, honoring legacy through innovation." Lorraine walked in with Sophie beside her, both in midnight blue. No matching, no mimicking, just strength, echoed in 2 generations, side by side. It was the first time Lorraine had agreed to attend the banquet in over a decade. This time, she hadn't just been invited, she had been requested. The evening moved slowly, course by course. Lobster bisque, champagne, polite laughter. A few attendees glanced toward Lorraine's table, half smiling, half curious. The whispers had already gone around. She's the one who took it all back. The one who never raised her voice but walked straight through the door they closed on her. At the center of the banquet program, Founders Achievement honoree, Lorraine Ruth Bishop. When her name was called, applause didn't start in a ripple. It came in like weather, steady, full, and rising. Some stood, not because they were supposed to, but because they wanted to. Lorraine stood slowly. Sophie touched her wrist gently and let go just as gently. Lorraine made her way to the stage without fanfare. No stumble, no stalling, just grace sharpened into steel. She stepped behind the podium. No notes, no slideshow, only her voice. "When they left me outside the restaurant," Lorraine began, her voice clear but soft, "they told me the reservation was for 4. Quiet laughter, small, respectful. I didn't argue. I didn't fight for a seat that had already been claimed by ego. I crossed the street and ordered dinner by myself." She paused. "I didn't just leave them behind. I built something new. My own table. One where nobody's name earns their chair. Only their work does." A beat. "And now?" She glanced toward Sophie, seated front and center, beaming. "The table's not just mine. It's ours." Flashbulbs popped. The applause returned. Not louder, but firmer. As the orchestra cued its soft exit swell, Lorraine stepped down without waiting for the MC. Somewhere across town, Max watched the broadcast from his apartment couch. The TV flickered in the dark room. No sound, just the image of his mother walking off stage, flanked by applause he would never earn back. His name wasn't mentioned, not once. He poured another drink and muted the screen. The sound wasn't the part that stung. Outside the ballroom, the air was cooler than expected, the Charleston night wrapped in jasmine and tide. Lorraine stepped into the glow of the street lamps, heels steady, eyes dry, chin lifted, not out of defiance, but completion. Sophie joined her, slipping her arm through Lorraine's without a word. They didn't need a limo. They didn't need a statement. They just needed the walk. I didn't just remove them. I redefined what gets built when I'm left outside.